recording here in a minute, and then I'll do my intro, and then we'll get going. So, all right. Welcome to this edition of CBAN's Member Spotlight. I'm Curtis Dean, one of the co-founders of CBAN, and today we are lucky to have some of the first members of CBAN join us here on our webcast. We've got the folks from FARR Technologies are joining us, one of our very first associate members. Thank you very much for joining us, Dave Fridley and Peter Rasmussen. We appreciate your time today.
Well, thanks for inviting us.
Absolutely, gentlemen. So tell us a little bit about FARR Technologies. What do you guys do and why do you do it?
Sounds good. Just to kick it off, you have the beginning and the end of FARR here. Dave is the F in Fridley in the beginning of FARR, and I'm the Rasmussen at the end of FARR. So why didn't I figure that out before? I like it.
Yeah, we have 4 main partners, and then our employees can buy in too for a piece of the action.
Gotcha. Okay, great.
So we've been around since 2012. Kind of formed out of a group, the 4 core of us and some other the core employees in our former employer, and we decided it was time to quit talking about it and do it ourselves. So we've had an opportunity over the past 10 years come this August to help build a whole bunch of fiber to the home networks with a wide variety of clients, everything from kind of our traditional ILECs, independent local exchange carriers, to CLECs, to some municipalities, and several statewide broadband networks.
And what you do is pretty much everything from project conception through construction and management to turning it up, right?
Correct. We can take you at any point on that continuum. If you are just starting to think about a fiber to the home network, we can help you with that process, present some financials, some feasibility studies, take that to through the legal hoops and the regulatory hoops to get to a point where we draw up a network, take it to a contract basis, put that stuff out for bid, and then project manage it and close it out. And then at whatever point in time you're ready, turn it over to the client to actually run the network. And then obviously as other things come up, we're available to help out on a one-off basis. We tend to be kind of a special project focus, especially with clients who are already in the business. And we can provide that transition assistance to those who are new to the business.
Great, great. Now, you've been doing this how many years? Each of you in the industry for a few, I would imagine.
Well, as the beginning and the end of FARR, Dave and I prefer to think of ourselves as mature, as opposed to other adjectives that you might describe us as. But yeah, Dave's been around, and I've been around in the business for more than 30 years. So got a lot of perspective there.
Yeah, well, I mean, you bring all of that to the table with your clients. That's really important, I think.
Yeah, we don't like to say we've seen it all, but we've seen a lot.
Probably seen it. Well, there's never all never happens, because the next thing is going to be different than the last thing you did, right?
We're both old enough to what they don't call it. We didn't call it CLECs in the day. We called it edging out.
Edging out.
And I see that term coming back a little bit now again. So.
It sure is, actually, is communities. I mean, you look at some of the community projects even that you guys have been involved with here in Iowa about, okay, we've served our community. Now we've got rural areas next door. Let's see if we can figure out a way to edge out and provide better service to those folks.
Absolutely.
So what do you see as your role overall in helping bring better broadband to more people?
Well, I'll throw out my 2 cents and let Dave add on here. But I guess my basic thought process is that what I see is us being able to, especially with all of the new funding coming in from federal sources, state sources, and such into the rural markets especially, is to basically assist new players or existing players who are interested in being the small guy in the market. My personal opinion is we've had the regulatory environment going all the way back to the 96 Telecom Act and the price cap implementation of that act that in essence created a lot of holes, and that's where I see a lot of demand coming from, especially in the muni market.
Yeah.
There are a lot of communities that have an incumbent dialect who is probably not invested in that market for several decades. Probably got a cable TV company who is similar to that. And then maybe you've got a fixed wireless provider that may or may not be fully meeting the needs of the community.
Yeah.
So Dave, I'll let you do some talking now.
Yeah, that covered it pretty well. I mean, the two of us have worked, in my case, almost 35 years with ILECs in particular.
Yeah.
It wasn't until, 2012 was when a USA Communications manager, Mark Harrison, passed away of cancer. But at the time he called and I was going to be down there and he said, you need to help me talk these people out of Vinton out of doing this project because they don't know what they're doing and I don't have the time to deal with them, even though USA Communication was already in part of the town.
Right.
And I did that, but they didn't listen. They had my contact and they just kept contacting me. And years later, as I told them in a board meeting, here we are. But they were determined. And at that point, that's when we help them from start to finish. I mean, and there's a difference that, we had to learn too, because with an ILEC, they've already got their money. They've got their operations in place. So they're like 4 steps down the ladder of a 10-step process where we've got, as you well know, because you've been heavily involved with, okay, this is broadband. Here's what you can do. Here's your, you've had those meetings. You've been that initial contact in Iowa, and as of but you've been, at the very, I'll call it step 0. Here's the problem, and what can we do? And here's what you can do. And then we at some point come along in there and help. So then we have to set up all that organization, set up the bonding, all the stuff that. We've been involved with financials a little bit with the ILECs, but not as detailed as we have to do here.
Yeah.
Because, again, they're established. So we had to change our thinking quite a bit too. And we've run into several situations already where we've had to stay on as we transition over to like a third party to run the operations, which we can do, but that's not, our function is to be there forever. Our job is to work ourselves out of a job.
Yes.
And as Peter said, special projects is the way we feel about these things. Okay, then we deal with you, and if we do a good job, you'll call us the next time you need something when you do that edge out or whatever.
Would you say that the biggest challenge of working with say municipal broadband systems is that startup mentality that you have? I mean, you have to approach it as a startup business, and let's face it, sometimes governmental entities, including utilities, don't have that kind of bandwidth, so to speak, to be able to spin that up. So you probably have to kind of pull them along a little bit, right?
Well, absolutely. I mean, and it's not a knock on them. It's just the reality of that. Exactly. They're busy running a municipal, they may have the water and they might even have the electric. But this is a totally new business venture, no different than any of the 3 of us going out there and, and opening a retail store of some sort. We have to learn. So a lot of that is just being able to go out there. And again, we've had to adjust how we do things and account for things we didn't normally have to. For example, and I took over a project recently, and the money kept there upset because every time they turned around, the cost of the project was moving up. And I said, well, when I looked at it, it was because the original estimate was to do the outside plant. Then the next estimate, oh yeah, you got to do the electronics. And then it just kept going up. And then when I got involved, I'm saying, well, you don't have any of the miscellaneous expenses in there. What you have to pay Curtis Dean to help you. You don't have that in your budget. You don't have most of my stuff in the budget. You don't have your bonding. And think about it, that's 3%. You take a $20 million project, 3%. We've got to have that all in there so that when we go to the people, as a taxpayer myself, I want to know. I don't want you doubling the cost of this thing,
right?
And that's some of the stuff that we've had to. Okay, I want to be aware of everything, to the point we keep a spreadsheet that we start with and we take it all the way through the project.
Yeah.
Our estimates, so that we were off 5% on this one, but we were under 5% on another, and it works out pretty good. But those miscellaneous items, I call them, can be $1 million of a $20 million project. For example.
Absolutely.
And if you don't account for it, you're going to pay eventually, and that's when everybody gets upset.
And those decisions that are made in that process,
yes,
are going to have revenue impacts long term.
Absolutely. So, we want that business plan to truly represent your total cost, number one, of the construction and ongoing maintenance and all these miscellaneous items. Again, if you got to pay a 3% bond, that's a healthy chunk of change. And I see that missing on so many of the business plans that we've seen.
Yep.
And
one other thing Dave's well aware of is that there are different legal requirements in each state. So state by state, yes. Some states are very accustomed to having municipals in the communications business. Others are not used to it. And then there's some that are just flat out antagonistic.
Yeah. When you take Iowa and Minnesota, we're pretty lucky there.
We are.
They've been very aggressive. The legislature. I mean, there's rules. We all have rules to require, bidding rules, all that. So fine.
I've seen communities issue proposals for projects and get responses where the response that was given didn't meet the law of the state it was being done. And it was simply because the respondent didn't know that the rules in that state. And
and again, they have to do these RFPs, and you know well as well. You and I both done them, Curtis, of trying to cover it so it's people can respond to them.
Yeah.
I mean, we literally have one in-house as we speak that our questions are about 4 pages long and the RFP is 2.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing covered in there. So it's hard to give a response. And I'm sure they're looking at it now going, oh my, there's a lot to this. And again, they want to do something, fine, we'll help them. And as will other consultants. I'm sure we're just one of many that have sent all these questions.
Well, one of the things one of the reasons is that CBAN we built CBAN was to have that kind of knowledge sharing in that community, because we know that for every one community that's out there that's trying to solve a problem, there are a bunch of communities that have solved that problem or have tried to solve that problem. So we always like to get that, sharing of best practices. And so CBAN members are talking to other members about how did you do this or how did you do that? And not only among entities like yourselves that are, that's your business, but, provider to provider. So, that's one of the things we tried to build within the CBAN ecosystem.
Now, and I'm a big believer of win-win. And
absolutely.
Peter's heard it for so many years, and that's why we were interested in CBAN. I mean, we think it was a good idea. We still believe it was a good idea to pat you on the back a little bit because it was your idea, but let's talk about it. Let's help these entities that are looking at it to get past step 0 so that we can start to say, okay, can we do this or not? Kind of understand the rules. You're not going to know everything, but just having an organization like that, I think is a good deal. And I think it's a good deal for us as a vendor, that provides services as well as for Muni. It works both ways.
Well, we've certainly appreciated you guys being at the table literally since day one and being part of our events and part of our functions that we've done. So we do appreciate that. One of the things I'm constantly giving a little grief about, Dave, and Peter, not so much, because I think this is Dave's thing, is your crystal ball that you have. So I'm going to ask you maybe you have it right there. How convenient, right? There's the old crystal ball. Dave Fridley, FARR Technologies crystal ball that was created in a lab somewhere at great cost. So what are you using that crystal ball a little bit, both of you, and you can weigh in separately if you'd like. What do you see are the biggest challenges coming up when it comes to broadband deployment in the next few years? I mean, there's probably plenty of challenges out there. What are the ones that keep you up at night?
I guess as I look out, there's a lot of talk about the BEAD program coming up here. Some good news is that at least the individual states are going to have a lot more say in how they distribute the money within their state. Compare and contrast with the recent RDOF and some of the challenges that process is going through. So the good news is the states have got a lot of work in front of them, but at least they're in better control of where that money will flow within their state boundaries.
Right.
I think the bigger challenge will be, Iowa may be in a better position than others simply because they have an existing framework with regard to the Office of the Chief Information Officer and the NOFA 6, 5, 6, and 7 that they've come through. But even with that experience, I believe they're going to have to really dig in because the BEAD program is how would I say, it's a multi-round deal.
Yeah.
It's like, here's some money, give us an initial proposal, then give us a second proposal, then give us a final proposal. So there are multiple rounds there, and I think especially with the experience they're having with the NOFA 7 process, every round takes effort.
Yeah, it does.
If you don't
there's tweaks to each one.
And staff for that, there could be some really, really long days and long nights.
Yeah.
And the problem is that with the federal legislation, they put some timelines in there, and so it's not like you can just sort of kick the can down the road and say, well, I'll get to it when I get to it. No, you've got some fairly hard deadlines that aren't going to be easily waived. So I guess that's the biggest challenge that I see. I think 5 years ago the money wasn't there. Money's there now. Now it's a question of how's that money getting distributed.
Best way to distribute it. The mechanics of that are not easy either. And you mentioned Iowa as an example, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and for other examples of states with good, strong broadband offices. But then you have other states, and we've been working with a group in Michigan where the state legally has a broadband office, but the legislature has never appropriated funds. So it's an office without people or resources. So it's going to be uneven, and the states that aren't doing that right now are going to have to scramble to get it done.
And being from South Dakota, South Dakota doesn't have a broadband office per se, but they've in effect had it because they're anything of this note. We built a statewide network for them years ago, the DEED network, and that was all run by this office. So they have the personnel in place. So we connected with the universities and all that, and we engineered that. So it's there's out there, it's out there, and it's important that they do have somebody that can do that.
What about the supply chain, Dave? I would think that's going to be a pain point for a little while to come.
Yeah, it's amazing. Of course, I'm a glass 3/4 full sort of guy. We've went through these supply chain issues before, back in 2011, 12, when all the wireless companies said, we're going to connect all of our cell towers with fiber. They did the same thing to it. All of a sudden, 75 weeks, that type of stuff for getting cable and duct. But we've already got, entities that are, all of a sudden it's 6 weeks out, 2 months out already. I was expecting more later this year. I mean, there's still certain areas, but we did, one of the things that happened back then, and it's happened again here, as soon as COVID hit, a lot of the big tier 1s and tier 2s started, and the large tier 3s, the larger independent telephone companies, started ordering materials back in 2020.
Right.
They have a year's stock on hand. So that we kind of had that start happening, but the good part is, most of those now can look back and say, okay, I've got enough for 2022 and maybe even 2023. So all of a sudden orders are getting filled there that have already been filled, and they're saying, okay, if you order now, there's still a supply issue, and it's circuit and stuff like that.
It's more manageable. It seems to be the distributors are getting a lot more creative too in meeting those, trying to meet deadlines, trying to meet delivery.
And there's not less messing around. Our clients are just as guilty as we are of, okay, I think I'm going to order that next week, but I may hold off till next month, and it's not much of that going on right now. It's like, okay, if you get a price that's within your, that you can handle, get it ordered.
It certainly does. It certainly does help the people that are good planners ahead, right? Yeah. One of the CBAN members, in fact, I was talking to the other day, and they've got projects that they're going to launch here this spring that were NOFA funded through the state broadband grant program. But they anticipated those projects ahead of time. They knew areas that were going to open. They didn't know they for sure they would get the funding, but they went ahead and got the equipment on order, or the supplies on order. So they'll be come out of the gate right away this spring and be able to start building those projects because they had thought way ahead and got things ordered. So that's
yeah, we have a company right now that we just signed up to work for. I've worked for them off and on over the years. They're a pretty good size, so they use multiple consultants even. So, but they've ordered all their materials for the most part last fall. So all we're really doing, they're experienced enough in their case that they can order materials. And now what we're doing when we actually physically design the several communities we're going to do, we're fine tuning it. So the vast majority of the materials are already on order. We might have some spot outages, but for the most part, it's ready to go. So, but then again, an ILEC's in that position to do that.
Right.
In the municipal market, you got a lot of things to do before that. That's why all of a sudden you've lost another year.
Especially as a startup, you can't even make any orders until you have all the ducks lined up and you have the money in hand.
Absolutely.
So
all that background stuff.
Yeah.
But I believe necessity, stimulates innovation. So we've worked our way around that, and I think in another year or so it'll clean up. Although with all this money coming in, I'm still back to where I was 10, 12 years ago, talking about to my ILEC customers that I've worked with for 30, 35 years. We've got the donut hole situation going on. In fact, I have a whole presentation about it at the MTA coming up to self-serve myself a little bit in a couple of weeks. But we're doing a presentation on it. We've got communities under, as you well know, that's where you've been working, 10,000 population or less. They've got horrible service, frankly, in most cases. And you got an ILEC that surrounds them. So I keep talking to him again and saying, you have operational staff available. We're trying to hire these people. Why wouldn't you just do a contract and an operations contract? Or, you've talked about overbuilding this town, but you haven't done it. Let the city come up with some money. And be full scale partners. Private public partnerships, I think, are going to come back. And if you look at that funding, there's a lot of cases where it's a criteria to get more funding is to have a private public partnership.
Absolutely.
So I keep telling them, why not set that up now? It may not help on this straight municipal project we're doing inside a city, but if we edge out, you're already ready to go. And I think we just got to keep the conversation. The walls are thinner and maybe not as tall, but they're still there. And we went through this with the electric and and the telecom years ago. But they're getting better. I mean, they're starting to talk to each other. They started a conversation. Now you're seeing more partnerships. And I think that's just good. I mean, at the end of the day, we got to give service to people.
Absolutely. Well, hey, here's your website. The web address, everyone, as you're watching. If you want to learn more from Dave and Peter and their team at FARR Technologies, this is where you go online. They'll help you with that crystal ball. I know that they'll be running into you guys at other conferences and whatnot as time goes on. Thank you so much to FARR Technologies for being a CBAN associate member. And gentlemen, thanks for joining us here today on our CBAN Member Spotlight. Appreciate it. And we'll see everybody. You bet. We'll see everybody on our next edition of CBAN Member Spotlight.
But I do have to warn you, the crystal ball shows everything backwards and upside down.
Ooh.
If you look into it, just keep that in mind.
Pretty much described my life, backwards and upside down. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. I can stop the recording right there. But before I hit stop, I will send you guys a link when this is done. It'll just be posted on our YouTube page. Also, just to give you a heads up, I just got approval yesterday. We're going to, if you're interested, that is, we're doing a CBAN reception on the evening of April 6th. And then IAMU is having a spring one-day meeting on the 7th. This information will be going out real soon. Okay. But we've usually in these one-day meetings, we haven't had vendor tables, but we're going to this time. So you can have a vendor table for Friday night for the reception at CBAN and all day the next day for the same price. So just a heads up, that information, I hope to get an email blast out tomorrow.
What's the dates on that?
April 6th and 7th. and it'll be at the Stony Creek in Johnston.
The Johnston, Iowa place?
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I thought I saw something on that, but I didn't. Okay.
yeah, the CBAN reception is just going to be, you know, kind of a meet and greet and some hors d'oeuvres and some drinks, but you can set your table up that afternoon and then just leave it up for us or for IAMU the next day, because we're going to do everything in that same room.
Okay, so it's an IAMU event. Okay.
Yeah. Kind of a joint event, but yeah, CBAN, the reception that
Well, it's a great place to get those guys there, especially the ones that are thinking about it, and to talk to the ones who've done it.
Yeah, that's the goal. Now that I got everything nailed down, I can start shaking the tree and get people there. And if somebody says, "Well, I wish we'd have done this in the fall," I'm just going to shoot them, because
Yeah, we went through that in gory detail too many times.
yeah, it's like, God, you guys got to make me happy here. So
It's too early. It might be snow.
yeah, well, it could be. I could be digging by then.
But
Whatever.
the fall, it's cold, and it's
Yeah.
football season. Yeah, that was kind of
Spring
fun.
break.
That we got last one.
Can't do it in May. There's graduations. You
Yeah.
tell me every day of May you're at a graduation.
Well, how much time did you spend at that last meeting just trying to get, and then you could still see people starting to get irritated. It's like, well, I really like this, or I don't like
Yeah,
that.
I know.
Like, oh,
I know.
boy.
I can't make them happy, but oh well. We just had a broadband committee meeting this morning. I let them vote on everything. I said,
Yeah.
here are nominees for sessions at the spring meeting, and everybody, if you like this one, thumbs up. And then we had a tiebreaker, and so we got our topics scheduled. And rather than me picking them like I usually do, I made them pick them, so nobody can look at me and say, "Why did you pick these stupid sessions?" Like, well, go talk to those guys. They're on your broadband committee. They picked your stupid session.
Yeah, you have plausible deniability now.
Exactly. All right, guys. Well, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Curtis.
I'll probably post this sometime. I probably won't get to till Sunday to edit it, but I'll let you know when it's up on our YouTube page.
All right.
All right.
We appreciate it.
Soon. See you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.